some of these ideas are really beautiful, you know, like from a moral standpoint, like the things that Jesus asked you to do, being selfless, being service-oriented, you know, caring about the poor and the needy, not just being about your own accumulation of your possessions, recognizing the emptiness in the accumulation of possessions. Like, these are beautiful ideas that I subscribe to today. So I think part of my interest is this, like, I want to rescue Jesus from the hands of the people who are using him for evil.
Yeah, because they're pretty out of line. I mean, Jesus says this, doesn't he? You know, there'll be people who come to me saying, "Lord, Lord," and I'll say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." And there is an idea that the path is narrow, and it does just seem at times flatly contradictory, the attitudes that people have. And yet, I don't know if it's like a biblical literacy thing or what, but when you see like prosperity preachers, for example, flying around in private jets and things, and you think, I don't know how you can read the Gospels and not have this just jump off the page at you. Have you seen the clip of Donald Trump asked what his favorite Bible verse is? I think this is 2016
like, I'd rather
cycle.
not get into this.
So it's sort of very personal, and they're like, really, anything jump out? She's like, no, I think it's too personal. And they say, are you more of a Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy? And he goes, I would say probably equal. Equal.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think by the next time he's asked, you know, what your favorite Bible verse is, he's like, oh, it's, you know, 2 Corinthians 1:7.
Right,
like
right.
He's got the.
Well, this is the interesting thing about that. Because I want to give, like, first of all, there are many Christians who are just like buying this idea that like that Trump's actually a Christian, right? That is happening. But I will give, there's a lot of Christians, I'll give them credit. They don't for a second. They don't for a second buy that he's a Christian. They know that he's using the Christians for his ends. But, and I know many people like this, but they believe that the things that he's a crude tool to basically accomplish things that are more consistent with the Christian worldview.
Yes.
And so it's a little more nuanced. And so I understand that that's what they think, but then I'm like, yeah, but okay, let's talk about the things that platform wants to establish that are still very inconsistent with the bulk of the things that Jesus talked about.
Then one wonders how much that is Christian nationalism as a whole, how much of it is really Christian outside of just being nominally Christian in the way that Trump might be nominally Christian. I mean, the one thing that gives me pause for thought is like when he was nearly assassinated, he did sort of quite convincingly portray a feeling of sort of spiritual awakening after that. I mean, he put it in quite uncomfortable terms about like, you know, well, if you look at that, if you look at how close it was, I saw the graphic of how it went just past my head. If you look at that and you're an atheist, you know, you got to start rethinking it. And there is this forgetting of Corey Comparatore, who's the firefighter that the bullet eventually went into and killed.
Right.
But I did think, if you were nearly assassinated, especially if you've already got this sort of egomania around you, President of the United States type thing, to have your head turned at the right moment and avoid assassination, I do wonder if maybe that did make him at the very least like seriously consider the possibility of divine watching.
Right.
But I don't know even then, although I want to grant him that possible space for spiritual growth, I don't know if that develops into like, you know, it's easier for a rich man to a camel to pass through the eye of a needle and all of that kind of stuff. But and so it's like it's a crude tool as you put it. And if you just look at the way that one does wonder, I always thought of doing like skits where you sort of put Jesus in the modern day and see how he would actually react, like the sort of this strange juxtaposition of the Christian attitude you're supposed to have and what Jesus was actually all about. Because some of his teachings I do think are difficult and maybe inapplicable. I had this idea of him like walking through central London or something, and somebody like comes up to him, says, "Sorry, have you got any change?" And the disciples would go, "Sorry, mate, we haven't got any change." And he goes, "You know, brethren, when one is in need, you know, if you do this to the least of these, you do it to me." So it's like, you know, Matthew, grab the purse and give them some money. Anyway, as I was saying, and then another person comes up, "Have you got any change, mate?" And they're like, "Oh, we just get it." And he's like, because one person is in need, because you've helped one, does that lessen the need to help another? No. Peter, grab your tunic. We're going to give it to him, And then and people just keep sort of coming up, and at the end, someone comes up. You got any change? And Jesus is like, sorry, mate. I haven't got any change. Because I do wonder, how directly applicable some of these teachings are to the modern world. And so it's kind of easy to say, Christian nationalism isn't Christian. Jesus would never abide by Trump. But it's difficult to imagine what Jesus would say about the presidency of a transcontinental republic in general anyway, right? So I always find it very difficult to make those kinds of claims.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that I think this is, back to the idea of like, why is it so fascinating? Mm-hmm. Because when you really appreciate the context for what this person was operating in, and you think about that for every scripture, the idea that like, oh, this makes so much more sense, not as some prophecy for current times, but it was a rhetorical exercise for what they were dealing with. Mm-hmm. And to me, the Bible actually becomes more meaningful in one sense, maybe not in like a ultimate meaning way, but in the way that we actually find and build meaning as humans based on how we interact with our circumstances and how our values interact with our circumstances. Like that's what these biblical writers were doing all along. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it kind of comes alive to me. Like I always thought, I don't understand these biblical scholars who aren't Christians. Like it was fascinating. You study this for a living and you don't believe it? Mm-hmm. But now I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, not only because it was so personal to me and foundational to who I am, but because it really is this story of the human struggle to figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah. Context is always key with any kind of art, and in a way the Gospels can be considered they're not art per se, but the sort of artistic elements, the beauty, the truth, the poetry, the meaning that jumps out. A lot of that has got to do with contextualizing a piece of art. Like mm-hmm. so much of it has got to do with that. That's something I clocked when the book Ways of Seeing by John Berger, or is it Berger? I don't know how to say it.
I haven't read it.
But he's got this TV show as well that he did. And one of the things he does is he shows this picture. He says, just look at this picture and see what you think about it, and then turn the page. And you turn over the page and it's the same picture, but it's got a caption now. It says, this is the last painting Van Gogh made before he killed himself. Mm. It's like, how has that changed the way that you interact with this painting? And some people want to say it kind of shouldn't. No, the art should stand for itself, but it clearly does. Context plays a massive, massive part. And when you consider the first century Jewish context in which Jesus is working, so many of his claims are transformed. And this is something Christians always want to do when it comes to things like his claims to divinity and stuff. It's like, no, you have to understand, to a Jew at the time, this would have been a really significant thing to say. Claiming to be the Lord of the Sabbath would have been huge. Invoking the I am statement would have been absolutely massive. But I think we do need to do that sort of writ large. And maybe some of the good stuff needs to be contextualized as well as the bad stuff. Because they're willing to jump on it. Like if you say, what about what the Bible said? What about when Paul's talking about women or slavery in the Old Testament? It's like, oh, it's context. Like that doesn't apply today. It's like totally different. You got to understand there's the cult of Artemis and women were getting power that they shouldn't have, and they were bond servants. Okay, but with a lot of the rest of the stuff, it's just quite flatly like, the Bible gives us a guide as how to live today. It's eternal truth. Like, what do you mean? You need to reinterpret it. What are you talking about? And I just kind of think we should look for a bit more consistency on that front, maybe. If you enjoyed that clip, you can watch the full conversation with Rhett McLaughlin by clicking the link that's on your screen. To support the show and get early, ad-free access to episodes, subscribe to my Substack at alexoconnor.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.